The palace of the Alpha King stretched high into the sky, its towers wrapped in frost and its walls glinting under the cold winter sun. The people of the kingdom often whispered that the palace itself was alive, holding the power of generations of alphas within its stones. Inside, every room was carved with intricate symbols, each telling the story of strength, loyalty, and the wild bond between alphas and their wolves. But despite the grandeur of the palace, a sorrow hung in the air, a sound so piercing that it unsettled even the bravest guards. It was the cry of the Alpha King's son, Prince Kalen. Kalen had been born different from other heirs. In a world where every alpha child formed a bond with a wolf at birth, he had come into the world alone. No wolf had ever appeared for him. The court, proud of their tradition and power, could not understand why the alpha blood in him had failed to awaken the bond. And so he cried, every day and night. His wails echoed through the halls of marble and gold. Servants whispered of a curse while nobles glanced at one another with fear and suspicion. Even the Alpha King, a man of great strength and authority, did not know what to do. He had ruled for decades with wisdom and courage, but his son's cries shook him in a way that no enemy or battle ever had. The prince's chambers were vast, decorated with tapestries of past victories and paintings of great wolves, yet the silence in the room felt heavy, oppressive. Kalen lay on a large bed covered in silken blankets, but comfort never reached him. His small hands clenched the sheets and his blue eyes shimmered with tears. No lullaby, no soothing word from the nurses, no warmth from the hearth could silence his endless sorrow. Outside his door, the palace moved around the prince like a delicate dance of fear and obedience. The servants tiptoed through the halls, careful not to wake him, careful not to draw the attention of the Alpha King, who often paced with clenched fists. His mind clouded with worry. He cries again. One maid whispered to another, her voice trembling. Do you think he will ever stop? The other shook her head. I do not know. Some say he is cursed. Some say the wolves will come eventually, but maybe not. Even the guards who were sworn to protect the heir felt a chill when they heard his cries. It was not just the sound of a child in pain. It was the echo of something unnatural, something that shook the very walls of the palace. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the sky turned a deep purple, the Alpha King entered his son's chamber. His face, usually composed and commanding, now carried a shadow of fear. He knelt beside Kalen's bed, trying to understand the tiny figure who had come to haunt his life with relentless grief. My son, the king said softly, his voice firm but gentle. Why do you cry so? You are the heir of this kingdom. You have everything a prince could want. Kalen lifted his tear-streaked face, staring at his father with a mixture of fear and longing. He did not speak, for his voice was swallowed by years of loneliness and despair. The Alpha King reached out, placing a hand on the prince's shoulder. You are my son, he said again, and you are not alone. I will find a way to help you. But even as the words left his lips, the king knew he had no answers. He had never faced a situation like this. He had fought wars, defeated enemies, and commanded legions of loyal warriors, yet he felt powerless before the cries of his own child. Outside, the wind howled through the palace towers. Shadows stretched across the walls, and the fire in the hearth flickered nervously. The night seemed alive, watching the helplessness of the Alpha King and the sorrow of his son. It was during one of these long nights that a rumor reached the palace gates. From the distant northern lands, far beyond the frozen rivers and shadowed forests, a wolfless Omega had been seen traveling alone. No one knew much about her, only that she was feared and respected in equal measure. Outcast from her clan, she carried herself with quiet power, and she had an unusual ability to sense the hearts of others, even when their voices were silent. The palace guards were wary when the news reached them. She is dangerous, one said. She has no pack, no bond. Who knows what she will do? Yet the Alpha King could not ignore it. If there was even a chance that this wolfless Omega could reach his son, calm him, or awaken what the wolves had failed to, he would have her brought to the palace. And so, one gray morning, a rider appeared at the palace gates. She was slender and tall, dressed in simple, dark clothing that did not hide her strength. Her hair was silver in the pale dawn light, and her eyes were sharp and steady. She carried no weapon, yet there was a quiet authority in the way she rode, a feeling that she belonged neither entirely to the human world nor the wild lands beyond. The Alpha King met her at the gates. You are the wolfless Omega? He asked, his voice low and commanding. I am, she replied simply. Her voice was calm even, and carried a strange melody that seemed to soothe the tension in the morning air. I heard the cries of your son. Kaelin's wails had not reached her through sound alone. She could feel the despair, the longing, and the loneliness that clung to him like a shadow. It was a strange gift, one she had learned to use carefully. The king studied her, trying to read any threat in her calm demeanor. But there was none. Only a quiet certainty, a strength that did not need to roar. You may see him, the king said after a pause. But know this. If he is harmed in any way, you will answer to me. The Wolfless Omega bowed slightly. I wish no harm, only to help. And so she was led through the long corridors of the palace, past guards who watched her nervously, past tapestries depicting past alphas with their wolves, to the chamber where Prince Kaelin lay crying as he had every day of his life. She entered quietly, and for the first time in many months, Kaelin stopped. His sobs faded into silence as he looked up, his eyes wide and uncomprehending. The Omega knelt before him, her hands resting lightly on her knees. I can hear you, she said softly, even where the wolves cannot. You are not alone. For a moment, the prince said nothing. Then he crawled toward her, his small hands reaching out instinctively. He did not know why, but he trusted her in a way he had trusted no one before. The palace walls seemed to hold their breath. The servants watched from the doorways, astonished and fearful. The Alpha King, standing in the shadows of the chamber, felt a strange stirring in his chest, a hope, fear, and a cautious relief all mixed together. The Wolfless Omega smiled faintly, understanding the power of her own presence. She had no pack, no bond with the wild. Yet here she was, touching the heart of an alpha prince where no wolf could reach. Outside the palace, the wind carried a whisper through the frozen trees. Somewhere in the shadowed forest, eyes watched the palace carefully. A figure cloaked in darkness muttered under its breath, "The Wolfless Omega dares what no alpha may touch." And inside the palace, in a chamber where despair had lived for far too long, the prince's cries finally began to fade. For the first time, he was not alone. After the Wolfless Omega arrived at the palace, the halls seemed to change. The frozen echoes of Kaelin's cries were replaced by a cautious, fragile silence. A silence that trembled with curiosity and fear. Even the Alpha King noticed it. His son's chambers, once filled with relentless sorrow, now held a strange stillness, as if the boy and the Omega had shifted something unseen in the palace itself. Leora, as she was called, moved through the rooms with quiet grace. Her presence was gentle yet commanding. She did not demand attention or respect. It was given willingly, almost instinctively. Servants and guards whispered behind her back, unsure whether to fear or admire her. Some said she had a strange power over the human heart. Others said she could sense truths that no one dared speak. But Kaelin felt none of the palace's fear. He felt curiosity. Every day Leora came to him. She did not speak much, and when she did, her words were soft, deliberate, and simple. She never tried to force him to do anything, never scolded or demanded obedience. She simply sat with him, letting her presence fill the empty spaces of his loneliness. Slowly, Kaelin began to trust her. Slowly, he began to speak, first in whispers, then in short sentences. You hear me?" he asked one morning, his small hands clutching the edge of the blanket. His voice was cautious, unsure if trust could last in a world that had always ignored him. "I do," Leora replied, kneeling beside his bed. Her eyes were steady, warm, but strong. "I hear everything you feel, even the things you cannot say." Kaelin's lips trembled. "Even in the sadness?" She smiled faintly. "Even the sadness." The prince blinked rapidly, as if confirming that someone at last could see the depths of his pain. For the first time, he felt that perhaps he was not broken after all. Perhaps there was hope. But Leora's gift was not only in hearing or understanding. She could sense the threads of unseen forces in the world, the currents of magic that ran through the palace walls and the ancient forests beyond. Though she had no pack, no wolf bond, she understood the language of the wild in a way most alphas never could, and so quietly she began to teach Kaelin. Not with commands or exercises, but with presence, observation, and small acts of encouragement. She placed his hands on objects, letting him feel their weight, their energy. She guided him to listen to the wind, to notice the patterns of shadow and light. She showed him how to breathe slowly, to still his mind, to control the rising panic that came with every failure of his bond. The Alpha King watched from afar, still wary, still uncertain. At first he thought her methods were strange, even foolish. But day by day he noticed the change. Kalen's cries were shorter, softer. He began to smile occasionally, though timidly, and he looked forward to the Omega's visits. Yet the palace was not a place of complete peace. Whispers of disapproval swirled like mist through the corridors. Some nobles thought it shameful that a wolfless Omega was allowed near the prince. Others feared what might happen if Kalen grew strong under her guidance. They saw her as an intruder, a threat to centuries of tradition and power. "You should not trust her," one courtier whispered to the Alpha King during a council meeting. "She has no pack, no loyalty. If she turns against us, the boy is doomed." The king clenched his fist, his face hard. "And if I do not trust her, the boy dies anyway," he muttered, almost to himself. The days passed. The snow outside the palace thickened, and the frost stretched across the windows like frozen lace. Inside, Kalen's world began to expand. He could sit for longer periods without crying. He could speak more clearly. And slowly, Leora guided him to stand, to walk through the halls, to feel the weight of his body and the rhythm of his heartbeat. One evening, Leora led Kalen to a small garden within the palace walls. The garden was protected from the frost, a secret place where the plants and trees defied the winter cold. It was here, among the shadows of twisting branches and sparkling frost, that she first spoke to him about courage. "Courage is not about fighting or being strong like the other alphas," she said, her voice low and steady. "It is about facing what scares you the most, about standing even when you feel alone." Kalen listened, his eyes wide. "Even if I have no wolf?" "Especially if you have no wolf," Leora replied. "You have something stronger, something that cannot be taken." He frowned. What is it?" "Your heart," she said softly. "And your mind. And the way you see the world. The wolves bond with power, but you can bond with more than that. With trust, with courage, with love." Kalen's lips trembled, and he looked down at his small hands. For the first time, he did not feel ashamed of his difference. For the first time, he felt a spark of hope. The quiet moments between them grew longer. Kalen would follow Leora through the halls, exploring corners of the palace he had never dared enter. She would point out hidden carvings on the walls, small fountains with water that glimmered like liquid stars, and windows that looked out onto the snow-covered mountains. Every detail, every small act, was a lesson in patience, observation, and wonder. But the palace was never free of danger, and whispers of the curse that haunted the Alpha lineage began to stir. The old story spoke of a shadow wolf, bound to punish alphas who failed their lineage or betrayed the pack. The nobles feared it. Yet the child, Kalen, was the first to show signs of awakening something new. They did not understand that Leora's presence did not weaken him, it strengthened him in ways unseen. One night, as a cold wind rattled the palace gates, Kalen and Leora sat together in the secret garden. He shivered, not from the cold, but from fear he could not name. "I feel something," he whispered. "Something in the walls, in the air." Leora placed her hand over his. "The world is alive," she said. "Even when you cannot see it, even when it frightens you, there are currents of power, threads that connect everything. You feel them because you are beginning to understand your place. You are not weak, Kalen. You are awakening." He looked at her, his eyes wide, a mixture of fear and wonder. "Awakening. Like the other alphas?" "Not like them," she said, her voice soft but certain. "Stronger. Different. And together, we can face whatever comes." The wind outside carried a whisper, a low and chilling sound, as though the shadowed forest itself had heard their words. The palace walls seemed to shiver in response, and in the distance the faintest glow of eyes appeared among the trees. Kalen did not notice. He only saw Leora, her calm presence steadying him, holding him when the world felt too large, too frightening. For the first time he felt a bond forming, not of wolves but of something deeper, something that could not be broken by fear or curse. Yet the danger was not gone. The nobles' murmurs grew louder, and the shadow wolf of legend stirred in the darkness, drawn to the boy who was not like any alpha before him. Kalen and Leora were only beginning to understand the power they held together, and the risks that came with it. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Kalen looked at Leora with a sudden determination. I want to be strong, he said. I want to. Stand like the other alphas. Leora smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. Then you will, she said. But not like them. Like yourself. The prince's eyes sparkled, a hint of courage shining through the fear. He took a deep breath, the icy air filling his lungs, and for the first time he felt that maybe, just maybe, he could overcome the endless sorrow that had defined his life. But as the last rays of sunlight faded from the garden, a shadow moved in the forest beyond the palace walls. Two glowing eyes watched the secret garden, and a whisper carried on the cold wind. The wolfless Omega dares to touch the air. Soon the world will see if she is friend or threat. Kalen shivered, though he did not know why. He felt the presence of something unseen, something waiting. Yet with Leora beside him, he felt ready to face it, even if fear still lingered at the edges of his heart. The journey had only just begun. The palace, once filled with cold silence and endless cries, now felt alive with tension. Prince Kalen's laughter, soft and tentative, echoed through the halls alongside Leora's calm voice. The boy was no longer just a helpless heir. He was learning, growing, awakening, yet the whispers in the corridors never stopped. Nobles muttered about the wolfless Omega, questioning why a girl without a pack could influence the Alpha's son. Fear, jealousy, and suspicion moved like shadows, hiding in corners and waiting. Kalen noticed it too. He could feel eyes watching him, waiting for him to falter. But with Leora by his side, he began to understand that courage was not the absence of fear, but standing tall despite it. One afternoon, Leora led Kalen to a secluded balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The snow glimmered like crushed diamonds, and the mountains loomed beyond, silent and eternal. The prince shivered, but it was not just the cold. A strange energy hung in the air, subtle yet powerful, as though the world itself was aware of him. You feel it, don't you? Leora asked quietly, her silver hair catching the sunlight. The currents of power in the palace, the threads that connect us all. Kalen nodded slowly. It feels strange, like something is watching. Something is, Leora said, her voice calm but serious. The Alpha lineage carries more than pride and power. It carries a curse, a shadow that wakes when it senses weakness or fear. Kalen's eyes widened. A curse? Will it hurt me? Not if you learn to face it, Leora replied. Fear gives it strength. Courage weakens it. She reached for his small hand. And you are stronger than you know. Not because of a wolf, but because of your heart. Kalen felt a flicker of hope. With every word, every lesson, he felt the walls around his heart breaking down. For the first time, he believed he might be more than the prince who cried endlessly. But the shadow of the curse was patient. It waited, and it had allies the boy could not see. In the dark corners of the palace, whispers moved like smoke. Some nobles began plotting, fearing the boy's unusual growth under Leora's guidance. Others grew envious, believing the wolfless Omega might steal power meant for the Alpha heir. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the sky turned deep purple, Kalen and Leora were walking through the halls when they overheard two courtiers speaking in hushed voices. He grows stronger every day, one said, and that girl, she has his mind in her hands. Who knows what she will do next? The other replied, if the king knew what she truly is, he would have her removed. She has no right to touch the air. Kalen froze, the words hitting him like icy wind. For a moment he felt the old fear, the old despair returning. But Leora squeezed his hand gently, her presence grounding him. Do not listen to them, she whispered. Their fear cannot touch you. Only your own fear can. Remember what I taught you? Courage is standing even when others doubt you. Kalen nodded, swallowing hard. He had learned to trust her words even when the world seemed against him. That night he could not sleep. Shadows from the flickering torchlight seemed to dance on the walls, whispering secrets only he could hear. Something deep in the palace stirred, an energy older than kings, older than the mountains themselves. The shadow wolf of legend had sensed him. Kalen's heart beat faster, a mixture of fear and anticipation. The next morning, Leora brought him to a hidden library, a place few had seen. Ancient tomes lined the walls, their spines etched with symbols of power and protection. She led Kalen to a large table and laid out a series of scrolls. These tell the story of the Alphas, she explained, of their victories, their losses, and the curses that follow their bloodline. You must understand your history if you are to face your future. Kalen leaned in, eyes wide. tracing the intricate drawings of wolves, warriors, and mysterious creatures. The curse. It is real? He asked. Leora nodded. Yes, and it is patient. It watches for fear, for weakness. But it cannot control a heart that chooses courage. For hours she guided him through the stories, pointing out patterns, explaining lessons hidden in the old texts. Kalen absorbed every word, his mind expanding with understanding. He was learning not just to survive, but to prepare for the challenges ahead. Yet even as he grew stronger, danger crept closer. That night, as the palace slept under a thick blanket of snow, Kalen heard a faint scratching at his window. He sat up in bed, heart racing, and saw two glowing eyes staring at him from the darkness outside. He froze, a cold shiver running down his spine. The shadow wolf had come. Before he could move, Leora appeared, her presence calm but commanding. Do not be afraid, she whispered, placing her hand on his shoulder. It watches, but it cannot harm you while we are together. Remember your courage. Kalen took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. What does it want? Control, Leora said softly. It wants fear. It wants doubt. But you have neither, not while you trust yourself and those who stand with you. The shadow wolf's eyes lingered a moment longer before disappearing into the night. Kalen exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and triumph. He had faced it without crying. He had faced it with courage. The following days brought both growth and challenge. Leora continued to teach him not just about the world, but about himself. They practiced walking through the palace halls with confidence, speaking in front of others, and understanding the subtle currents of power that ran through every corner of the kingdom. But the whispers in the palace never ceased. Some nobles began to speak openly against the boy and the Wolfless Omega, questioning the king's judgment. Others plotted in secret, seeking ways to undermine Kalen before he could rise fully into his power. One afternoon, Kalen and Leora were in the gardens, surrounded by frost-covered trees and sparkling ice, when a sudden commotion erupted. A messenger burst into the courtyard, breathless. Your Highness, the messenger said, bowing rapidly. A rider approaches from the northern border. He carries a message, urgent and dangerous. The Alpha King arrived moments later, his face pale but composed. He unfolded the message, his eyes scanning quickly. Then he looked up, his expression unreadable. They declare war, he said, voice low but firm. A neighboring Alpha Kingdom claims our heir is cursed, unfit to rule. They will come with armies, and they will not stop until they see the boy's strength broken. Kalen felt a cold weight settle over him. War, threats. The fear he had worked so hard to overcome now surged back, fierce and relentless. Leora placed her hand over his. You are not alone, she said quietly. Whatever comes, we face it together. Your courage, your heart, they are stronger than any army. Kalen nodded, swallowing hard. For the first time, he truly understood that his life would not just be about surviving the palace. It would be about facing the world, facing danger and standing tall despite the shadows that sought to destroy him. That night, he could not sleep again. The palace seemed larger, colder, filled with the echoes of the coming storm. Outside, the wind carried whispers of war and the faint, haunting presence of the shadow wolf. Inside, Kalen felt the first true stirrings of determination in his heart. He would not be broken. He would not cry endlessly. And with Leora beside him, he knew he could face what was to come. As the snow fell silently across the palace towers, a faint voice whispered in the darkness of the forest. The heir awakens. The Wolfless Omega has changed him. Soon all will see if courage can outshine the curse. Kalen shivered, but this time it was not fear. It was the tremor of anticipation, the first spark of a fire that would not be easily extinguished. The world was watching. The shadow waited. But the boy with the Omega at his side was ready to rise, and so, under the silver light of the winter moon, Kalen closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and prepared for the storm that would soon descend upon the palace. The storm had arrived. Dark clouds rolled over the palace towers, lightning flashing across the snow-covered mountains. The air was thick with tension, and even the grand halls of the Alpha King's palace seemed to hold their breath. Kalen had grown stronger under Leora's guidance, yet the shadow of the curse had not faded. It lingered in every corner, in every whisper of the wind, waiting for a single moment of weakness. That night, Leora led Kalen to the secret garden once more. The frost sparkled under the pale moonlight, and the statues of long-forgotten heroes seemed to watch silently. The boy's breath steamed in the cold air, but his eyes were focused, steady. "You are ready," Leora said softly, kneeling beside him. "Tonight we face more than fear. Tonight we face the shadow itself." Kalen shivered. I am ready?" His voice trembled, betraying the mixture of fear and excitement in his heart. "You are," Leora replied, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "But you will not face it alone. Whatever happens, we are together." The shadows in the garden seemed to twist and stretch, forming shapes that flickered like fire in the cold moonlight. From the darkness a faint growl echoed, low, haunting, and full of ancient power. The shadow wolf had arrived. Its eyes glowed like molten gold fixed on Kalen. Kalen's heart raced, but Leora's calm presence steadied him. She whispered, "Remember, fear feeds it. Courage weakens it. Trust yourself and trust me." The shadow wolf moved closer, its form both solid and shifting like smoke and stone entwined. It circled the boy, testing him, challenging him. Kalen clenched his fists, feeling the icy fear that had haunted him for years. But then he felt Leora's hand in his, warm and steady, and he took a deep breath. I am not afraid," he said, voice trembling but firm. "I am not weak. I am Kalen, son of the Alpha King, and I am not alone." The wolf paused, tilting its massive head, as if surprised by the boy's words. It circled again, closer this time, and Kalen felt the power of the curse pressing down on him. His knees threatened to buckle. His chest ached with the effort of holding courage, but he did not falter. Then, Leora stepped forward. Her silver hair glowed faintly in the moonlight, and her voice rang out, calm and commanding. "You will not harm him, not while we stand together." The shadow wolf recoiled, a low growl escaping its throat, as though sensing the invisible bond forming between Kalen and Leora. The air between them shimmered, and for the first time, Kalen felt something extraordinary, a connection not tied to a wolf but to Leora herself. It was as if their hearts beat in unison, their courage intertwining, their souls recognizing one another. Kalen's fear melted, replaced by a strange strength. He could feel the power flowing through him, the energy of the curse meeting the energy of his courage. And Leora, standing beside him, did something unimaginable. She placed her hand on his chest over his heart and closed her eyes. The moonlight seemed to bend around them, and the garden was filled with a soft, pulsing glow. Kalen felt warmth spread from the point of her touch, a wave of power and calm unlike anything he had ever known. It was not magic, not in the traditional sense, but something deeper, a bond of trust, courage, and soul. The shadow wolf roared, a sound that shook the frozen branches, but it could not touch Kalen. Every strike of fear, every attempt to overwhelm him, was repelled by the bond between him and Leora. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the wolf froze. Its glowing eyes lowered, and it retreated slowly into the darkness, leaving only silence and the cold night behind. Kalen sank to his knees, exhausted but triumphant. He looked at Leora, gratitude and wonder filling his gaze. You did it," he whispered. "I felt something like I have never felt before." Leora smiled, her eyes soft but proud. "No, Kalen, you did it. I only guided you. This strength, this courage, it was always inside you. I only helped you see it." The boy's heart swelled. For the first time in his life, he felt whole, not because of a wolf, not because of power or title, but because of trust, courage, and connection. He had faced the curse, and he had not only survived, he had grown stronger. But even in the quiet after triumph, the palace was not safe. The neighboring Alpha Kingdom, the one that had declared war, would not wait. Their armies were moving closer, and their hatred for the heir who had broken tradition was only growing. The Alpha King arrived at the garden shortly after the shadow wolf vanished. His face, often stern and unreadable, was softened by a rare mixture of awe and relief. He looked at Kalen and then at Leora. Both of you have changed him," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I did not understand until now. But I see it. He is not the prince who cried endlessly. He is stronger. Because of you." Kalen blinked, humbled by his father's words. He had longed for approval, for acceptance, and now he felt it. Not just for surviving, but for rising above the darkness. Leora nodded, but her expression was serious. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The curse is still patient. The war is coming. And there are those in the palace who will not accept him." Kalen's jaw tightened. He had faced the Shadow Wolf, but he knew that challenges beyond the palace walls would be even greater. Yet with Leora at his side, he felt ready. They had created something extraordinary together, a bond that could not be broken by fear, power, or tradition. That night, as snow fell softly over the palace, Kalen lay in his bed, thinking about the future. His cries were gone, replaced by determination and courage. His heart, once fragile and trembling, now beat with strength. But even in sleep, he sensed a presence at the edge of his mind, the Shadow Wolf, waiting, watching, and testing. Leora stayed by his side, silent and vigilant. She knew the bond they had formed was powerful, but it would be tested again. The coming war, the whispers of the palace, and the shadow of the curse would challenge them both. But together, they had done the unimaginable. Together they could face anything, and as the moonlight bathed the frozen garden, a whisper traveled through the night air, carried by the wind. "The air has awakened. The Wolfless Omega has bound her courage with his. Soon all will see the power of what they have created." Kalen shivered, not from fear but from the awareness of what was to come. His life had changed forever. He was no longer the crying prince. He was an heir of courage bound by something stronger than any wolf, stronger than any curse. Yet even in triumph the world waited. And the next challenge would be the hardest one yet. The storm raged outside the palace walls, snow lashing against stone and wind howling through the towers. Inside, Kalen and Leora sat together in silence, their bond unspoken but undeniable. The palace had changed. The boy had changed. And the legend of the Wolfless Omega and the Alpha heir was only beginning. The shadow waited. The world watched. And for the first time, Kalen felt ready to meet it. The dawn broke cold and pale over the palace, the snow reflecting the first fragile light of morning. A silence, heavy and tense, hung in the air. Today, the neighboring Alpha Kingdom's army would arrive at the gates. Their soldiers, clad in armor dark as storm clouds, were marching to challenge Kalen, the heir who had defied tradition, and the Wolfless Omega who had touched his heart. Kalen stood in the main hall, his posture straight, eyes steady. The boy who had cried endlessly was gone. In his place stood someone transformed, brave, aware, and unshakable. Beside him, Leora's calm presence radiated strength. Together they were a force neither army nor curse could break. The Alpha King entered, his face a mixture of pride and concern. "Kalen," he said, voice low but firm, "today you do not fight as a boy. You fight as a prince, as an heir of courage. Remember, you are not alone. Trust in yourself and trust in her." Kalen nodded. He felt the weight of his father's words, the responsibility of his title, but also the strength of the bond that Leora had forged with him. He knew the coming battle would not be simple. The shadow of the curse still lingered, waiting for fear to weaken him. But for the first time, fear did not control him. Outside the palace, the enemy army advanced, their banners snapping in the wind. The gates were guarded, the soldiers tense, but Kalen did not see their anxiety. He saw opportunity, challenge, and the moment to prove what he had become. Leora touched his shoulder lightly. "Remember what we learned," she whispered. "Courage is facing the impossible. You have done it before. You can do it again." Kalen took a deep breath, his chest filling with cold air. The palace walls seemed to hum with energy. The threads of power that Leora had taught him to feel now thrumming like invisible cords, connecting him to everything around him. The Shadow Wolf stirred in the distance, its eyes glowing with faint gold. But Kalen did not falter. The enemy approached the gates, and the air filled with the sound of marching boots and the clash of metal. Their leader, a tall alpha with a wolf-bonded companion, rode at the front, sneering. "Alpha King," he called, voice loud and arrogant. "Your heir is cursed. You cannot protect him. Surrender, and we may show mercy." Kalen stepped forward, his small but firm voice echoing through the courtyard. "I am not cursed," he said. "I am not weak. I am Kalen, son of the Alpha King, and I will not bow to fear or tradition. You will see strength you cannot imagine." The enemy leader laughed, a deep, cruel sound, and signaled his soldiers to attack. The clash began, the courtyard alive with noise, movement, and tension. But Kalen did not panic. He felt the pulse of courage through him, the bond with Leora grounding him. Every step he took was deliberate, every movement measured. And then something extraordinary happened. The shadow wolf appeared, no longer a threat but a silent observer. Kalen realized it had been testing him, pushing him to awaken his true strength. Now it lingered at the edge of the courtyard watching, waiting to see if he would rise completely. Leora stayed close, guiding him with subtle gestures, her calm presence helping him maintain focus. Soldiers from both sides hesitated as they noticed the boy's extraordinary composure. Whispers spread quickly. The air is different. The Wolfless Omega has changed him. Kalen's eyes scanned the battlefield. He saw soldiers faltering, unsure, and the enemy leader growing angry. He felt something deep within, a power beyond the ordinary, a strength tied not to wolves but to heart and mind. With Leora beside him, he could do what no other heir could. He raised his hand, a signal not of aggression but of command, and slowly the enemy began to falter. Their confidence cracked as they faced a prince who did not fear them, who moved with the certainty of someone who had faced the impossible. The Alpha King watched, astonished. He is leading them. Not with force, but with courage, he whispered. Kalen took another step forward, his voice rising over the chaos. Stop, you fight out of fear, not honor. Lay down your arms or face defeat. I am not the crying prince you expected. I am Kalen, and I will protect this kingdom. A hush fell over the courtyard. The soldiers, sensing the unshakable will of the boy and the calm authority of Leora, wavered. The enemy leader's wolf growled, sensing the shift in power, but it could do nothing. Kalen's courage, amplified by his bond with Leora, created a force no physical weapon could match. And then the shadow wolf emerged fully from the darkness. Its presence was massive, its eyes burning with golden fire. It did not attack, but it did not retreat. It circled the courtyard once, acknowledging Kalen, as though granting him its respect. The prince stood taller, feeling its power merge with his own courage, forming a shield that no enemy could pierce. The battle ended without a single strike. The enemy soldiers, overwhelmed by Kalen's unshakable spirit and the quiet, extraordinary power between him and Leora, lowered their weapons. Their leader glared, defeated not by swords but by courage. He dismounted, bowing slightly to Kalen, an acknowledgement of the boy's unimaginable strength. Kalen exhaled, relief and triumph flooding his chest. The courtyard was quiet now, filled with awe and wonder. The Alpha King approached, his expression softening with pride. You have done what I never imagined, he said, placing a hand on Kalen's shoulder. You have faced fear, the curse, and even armies. And you have triumphed. Kalen looked at Leora, his eyes shining. We did it, he whispered. Together. Leora smiled, her silver hair glowing faintly in the pale morning light. Yes, together. You trusted yourself. You trusted me. That is why you are stronger than any wolf or curse. The Alpha King nodded. The kingdom will never forget this day. Not because of power or title, but because of courage. You have awakened something no one expected. The true strength of the heir of the Alpha King. Kalen felt a warmth spread through his chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and understanding. He had cried endlessly, felt alone, and faced despair. But now he had grown beyond it all. He had learned that courage and trust could defeat fear, curses, and even armies. And he had discovered a bond stronger than any wolf could create. The shadow wolf, sensing the completion of its test, vanished silently into the forest. Its eyes glowed one last time, a silent acknowledgement that Kalen had passed the trial, that he was no longer the boy who cried, but a true heir in every sense. In the days that followed, the palace was alive with celebration. Soldiers and nobles marveled at Kalen's growth, and even those who had doubted him came to respect the prince who had faced fear itself. The Wolfless Omega, once feared and whispered about, became known as the one who had awakened courage and transformed a kingdom. Kalen and Leora spent time in the secret garden, walking among the frost-covered trees. The boy who had once cried endlessly now walked with confidence, his heart open, his mind clear and his spirit strong. You changed my life, Kalen said softly, looking at her with admiration. I would not have found this courage without you. Leora shook her head gently. You had it all along, Kalen. I only helped you see it. You chose to rise, to face fear, and to trust yourself. That is what made all the difference. The prince smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up the cold winter day. Then together we can face anything, he said. Yes, Leora replied, her voice calm but certain. Together, nothing can break us. And so under the pale light of the winter sun, the palace no longer echoed with endless cries. It was filled with courage, hope, and a bond that could not be broken. The Wolfless Omega and the Alpha Prince had done the unimaginable, creating a legend that would be remembered for generations. The shadow of the curse remained in the world, patient and watching. But Kalen, the prince who had cried endlessly, now stood unafraid, his heart and mind stronger than any enemy or fear. The unimaginable had become reality. He had risen, he had faced darkness, and he had triumphed. And as the snow fell silently around the palace, Kalen and Leora stood together, ready to face the future, no longer as boy and outsider, but as partners, allies, and heroes of a kingdom reborn.